I'd like to welcome you again to my channel this week. Today we're going to talk about some of the different naming conventions that's used for ammunition. I'm going to focus mostly on just the common ammunition that's in use in modern firearms today because the topic itself is already very confusing and very complex. And to go into any type of expansion of all the detail would be just way too much for the length of time that we have in a video for YouTube. Going to start out with shotgun ammunition. Shotgun ammunition, the most common size is the 12 gauge. There's less commonly the 16 gauge, and then there's the 20 gauge. There's also the real big one out there, the 10 gauge. Most people don't run across that too often, but they are out there. 12 gauge, again, being the most common. Well, how did that term come about? What does gauge mean? Well, when shotguns were developed, they were originally muzzle-loading firearms, which meant basically those where you pour the powder down the barrel, and then you'd put the ball in, and you ram it down, and then when you fired it off, the gunpowder would fire and shoot the ball out. Well, that ball, they were just lead round balls during that period. And the size of the shotgun was determined on how many of those balls that would fit the bore would it take to make a pound of lead. And so basically a 12 gauge, it took 12 of those sized balls to equal a pound. A 10 gauge would take 10. Of course, the fewer the number, the bigger around they are. So of course that means the barrel and the bore is bigger. Going the other direction, 16 gauge would take 16 lead balls, which means they're a little bit smaller. And then you go to 20 gauge, and you take 20 of them, so it's even smaller yet. So what about the 410? Well, 410, clearly it's not 410 balls or 4.1 balls. The 410 was named when it was developed based on a different form of measure. And it was based on the empirical unit of measure, and that's using inches, and it converts into the caliber. So basically, a 410 is 0.41 inches is 410. It's 0.410, and that makes the 410. People don't say 0.410, they usually just say 410. And it's the caliber of it. So that's why it's such a different name, because it's a different unit of measure. So let's move on to pistol cartridges. You have common ones, 9mm, 38, 357, 10mm, 45. What are all those? Well, the most common empirical measured ones would be like the 38, 357. Those, again, are empirical units of measure, so it's 0.357 inches or 0.38 inches. And moving to the metric side, you have 9mm, 10mm, things like that. Those are based on units of measure using the metric system. So a 9mm, the bullet is 9 millimeters diameter. 10mm, it's 10 millimeters diameter. So interestingly, a 357 and a 9mm, the diameters are pretty much both right about 9mm. The difference in them primarily is how long the bullet is, and therefore how much weight is behind it. The heavier the bullet, the more powerful the cartridge generally is, all things being equal. So what about then you have the 22, that's 0.22 inches, 25, 0.25 inches, and so on. Moving to rifle calibers, you'll have 50 caliber. Okay, that's a 50 caliber, which means it's a half an inch. The bullets are fairly long, they're very heavy. That's a very powerful rifle round. You'll have the 30-30, that's a 30 caliber bullet. And then what's that other 30 on the end? Well, this is where things start to get confusing. A 30-30 was named because of the development, when it was being developed, it used 30 grains of powder. So it was a 30 caliber bullet, 30 grains of powder, so it was the 30-30. Okay, just to make things more confusing, what about some of the more common ones you see, the 7.62 by 39? Okay, well, the first number is 7.62 millimeters. The 39 is how long the cartridge is. It's 39 millimeters. So that number after the X, it can stand for all kinds of things. That's why it's very important that you learn about what ammunition that your specific firearm takes, and then only buy that specific ammunition. It takes some knowledge on your part, but it's very important that you do this. Using the incorrect ammunition in a firearm is very dangerous. It can even cost you your life. So this isn't something to take lightly. And even when you start getting into ammunition where it seems to be the same, 9mm for example, just because it says 9mm, there's a lot of different kinds of 9mm. There's 9x19, 9x20, 9x21, 9x23, 9mm Largo, 9mm Luger, 9mm Parabellum. That's a whole separate video that I'm going to do just to kind of go into that. There again, it's very important you use the correct one. The same thing is true for the 22. Just being a 22, that can stand for a lot of different things. So I'll go into more in depth with that as well. I'll go in depth with several of the more common ammunition types to help you get an understanding of the ammunition that you need for your specific firearm. So as always, if you have any comments or questions, please let me know. I will do my best to answer them. If you have any feedback, please send that my way as well. I'm always willing to take constructive feedback and try to make any improvements. Or if you have any topics that you want me to cover, let me know that as well. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, and if you like the video, click the like button. I would appreciate that as well. Look forward to seeing you next week, and until then, be safe. Thanks.